fixing some technical stuff. You know, the online version of offline events. It's always we are getting used to it.
Yeah, we've all had to change.
Yeah.
Cioè riparte.
Okay, so we're waiting just like 30 seconds again. Okay.
Yeah, I think everybody's coming.
Everybody's coming. So because we have like another studio from Rome before, it was an Italian talk. So now we're waiting for the others. Okay, so I think we can start.
Yes,
right?
we can.
Yeah. So thank you for all of you, all the participants, and of course our special guest today from London, right? That are dedicating their time for us. This is the fourth day of SUPERDISTRICT, and the conversation is all about digital design. So to the people that are here for the first time, welcome to SUPERDISTRICT. SUPERDISTRICT is this format that started during the lockdown, and we started it because we wanted to see new faces and get to know each other during this phase where you couldn't go out. So we are in good company of some of the best Italian creative studios, and for the design week we wanted to open it up to international studios as well. So thank you to our guests. So who we are. We are District. We are a creative platform that gives opportunities, events, open call, jobs, workshops to designers and companies. We are based in Italy, and I'm Hassan. Nice to meet you. And here's Maria Francesca. There's also Marta.
Hi guys. Hi guys. Nice to see you.
For the new participants, so it's a time to exchange. It's an aperitivo time, so let's have a beer and chill. And let's enjoy, of course. We have a few rules. If you have questions, book it through the chat so we can give you the microphone, and you can ask it directly. And before any question, of course, do introduce yourself so you know what's at least your background. And so here we go. Today we have with us Christy from Pitch Studios. A future-focused design studio based between London and Melbourne.
Yeah, of course, should be also Chris with us. That is the other founder, but he's in Melbourne, so he's sleeping right now, right?
Yeah, that's okay.
So Christy, thank you very much to be with us. I'll leave you the stage for you, so you can start.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I'm just going to share my screen so you can see a little presentation, and then I'm going to jump into a project that I wanted to share with you. And yeah, I guess you can ask questions along the way. Keep it very conversational.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Okay.
We can see it.
See?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Over here. Okay. So just wanted to explain to you a little bit more about what Pitch Studios is. So Pitch Studios is a future-focused design studio, as you said, based between London and Melbourne, creating stories, images, and experiences for brands, agencies, and cultural institutions. Thematically, our process explores what we call phygital spaces, environments seeking to contextualize sort of like our fragmented world that we experience through digital culture. We've worked with organizations such as IM, the Future Laboratory. We've worked with Snapchat, TEDx, V&A Museum, Gucci and Nike, just to name a few. and creating short films, animations, web, AR, VR experiences, visual identities, and workshops now as well. Alongside our client work, we've also been lecturing with the London College of Fashion, and we've participated in a number of sort of industry-focused events, workshops, panels, talks, that kind of thing as well. And our approach, I guess, is interdisciplinary, which allows us to kind of harness a multifaceted toolkit using emotional connection, intuition, and empathy to bring ourselves and our audiences towards a more empathetic current and future. Instead of focusing on trends or industry insights, even though we do use those elements when designing, we opt for more of an emotional approach, placing emphasis on that sort of gut feeling or a sense of attachment to an idea. So I just wanted to share with you just a few quick pictures of the work that we've done in the past year or so. This was a illustration series that we made for the Future Laboratory. This was basically to illustrate the future of retail. So we created these sort of like environments that went with that. This was an interactive experiment that we worked on with a game engine, which was very fun for no one in particular, just for us. This was an image that was used for a collaboration with Snapchat that we did late last year. This is just another environment kind of textural image that we created for Reebok and Melbourne Fashion Week this year. And so I guess like our studio is reflexive, expanding and contracting between disciplines, ideas, and mediums. This allows our work to sort of adapt to any given situation, which also is very helpful during lockdown, COVID, pandemic, you know, all those types of things. We often seek to collaborate with external designers, artists, thinkers with diverse perspectives that may sort of challenge our own. And we also, whenever possible, we kind of engage in generative projects that collaborate with our audience as well. So through social media, for example, outside of the context of our client work, making the way to kind of expand and contract, this notion allows to kind of seep into our process as a studio as well. I guess very early on in the development of our studio, we understood that our lived experiences and creativity are often influenced by a myriad of external factors. Online and offline, we are oversaturated with content. It's sort of this never-ending brain dump of cultural and stylistic references that ultimately end up infused into our practice, even if it's sort of subconscious. We've become conscious of this industry climate and we've embraced the act of remix, taking the idea, the tool, the format, and reappropriating it, often combining it with other ideas, tools, and formats. This means that we're not limited to the outcome of the project. We make way for alternative manifestations. Projects can be experienced through websites, installations, animations, or short films, workshop images, the list kind of goes on. And this holds value in us being adaptive and adds another layer to our flexibility of our practice. So I guess like when we were talking with this particular talk, panel, discussion, or whatever you want to call it, we were kind of thinking about this idea of digital design and like where Pitch Studios fits into it. And I asked myself, you know, how does our studio fit into the context of digital design? And I think the short answer is that we don't, which is fine. But I think for us, like digital design is kind of more this like organic and fluid discipline to us.
Exactly.
Anything could be considered a digital interface in 2020. So the projects that we create aren't typically sitting inside UX, UI, CX design, but I think the outcomes that we create are very digitally focused, and we don't always adhere to labels, and we kind of like that anyway. So I think like one other thing. Oh.
It's native to your way of doing things. So
definitely, yeah, like intrinsic in our process, thinking of things as interfaces. Yeah. And then I guess a great segue into everything being connected into this notion of digital design was another part of our studio that we launched last year, which, you know, was a creative lab that we started, and we wanted this to kind of sit in a space where we didn't always have to create work for clients. We wanted it to be experimental, but we were looking at kind of behaviors and attitudes and communication and the way that we perceive ourselves through digital spaces and things like connection. So we launched our in-house lab last year, which is called Pitch Portal, which is an image here, to be able to allow us to expand on those ideas. This was an example of some work we did in Paris, which basically we created a social experiment, which we hosted through a digital platform, and then we created a website that represented what everyone had contributed to the social experiment, which was called Streaming Consciousness. So that's kind of one example of how we're not kind of constrained to what platform it exists on. And it's really experimental, and we like that about it. So I wanted to like jump into the project that I wanted to talk about today, which was for IM Weekend 2020. Basically, we were asked and approached by IM, who we've worked with before, to create their visual identity for their annual conference, which happens every year, usually in Barcelona. This year it was online, which is called IM Weekend. I thought maybe I'd just explain a little bit about IM and what they do. Mm-hmm. They are a futures organization that designs, this is taken from their website, alternative learning experiences, tools, and platforms to change how the digital economy is changing everything. So obviously it's a very big question that they're asking and a big mission. They kind of participate in a series of ventures around the globe. They do workshops, events, conferences, and I guess their whole mission is to spread collective critical hope about what happens next. A lot of what they look at is kind of like systems and structures that exist in our current day, and how we can kind of reimagine ourselves outside of those systems, and how we can change the planet, which, yeah, again, it sounds like a very big thing to do, but it's part of their practice. And it's why we align with them, definitely. So every year they put together a conference called IM Weekend with a distinct conceptual theme, with subtopics that explore their mission. So last year we had the pleasure of producing a short film, which was called Virtual Gap Year. That explored the sort of post-technological futures of the internet, where we were also excited because we got to collaborate with a team of artists. Virtually everyone was in a different region, and explored their theme, which was called the quantumness of archipelagos, which you can see in this image here. So this particular project last year was focusing on this idea that the planet is an archipelago, that we were kind of reframing our understanding of what we know about states and borders and regions, and kind of like how in digital spaces we tend to not. The question, what if we were citizens of the entire world rather than countries? So that was kind of like the seed that we used to develop last year's work that we did. But this year, our brief was looking to a slightly different task. Our first collaboration was very experimental. It was very narrative driven. It was a short film. It was kind of used, our initial project was kind of used as a, to spread the kind of word, to help push ticket sales, things like that. But this time we were asked to create a visual identity, which looked at the theme, the weirdness of interdependencies, while kind of also exploring their manifesto, which is called the Everything Manifesto. And I guess with this particular project, our main focus as designers was how can we visually represent the futures of design, and not necessarily what the future of design looks like, but how we can design the future. So what if we design for empathy and tolerance, humbleness, solidarity, responsibility and accountability and plurality? So this is just an image from, they do a sort of like a little preview of the next year at the previous year's event. This was not in 2020. But yeah, we were kind of looking at this other manifesto of theirs, which is called the Everything Manifesto, which, if you can imagine, it basically means that everything is interconnected. We as people, as a society, we're all interconnected with the planet. So that's animals, organisms, bacteria, like everything is interconnected, and technology is part of that ecosystem. So as I said earlier, like IAM's focus is that current systems are flawed and frameworks. So a lot of what they do is look at it from a critical theory perspective, or a critical perspective, design frameworks that exist currently and how we can improve those, or at least restructure those in a way that's really beneficial to not just us as humans, but as a whole world, whole planet. And so shifting from this idea of individualism to collectivism is really a big part of that, and it's something that our studio definitely adheres to. So yeah, and I guess one major question that arose out of this manifesto and this theme is how can we address the digital economy, how we can change the digital economy to address the environmental emergency. So there is sort of this clear parallel between digital consumption, capitalism, even the Black Lives Matter movement, and the climate emergency. So through this brief, we were able to sort of identify those parallels and build a visual reimagination of our understanding of like ecosystems, whether they be organic or synthetic, and sort of looking to the future and where we're headed. If you're interested, it's very interesting. The Everything Manifesto, you can just go to IAM's website and read it. It's very long, so I won't go too much into it, but it's a great read, and I think they have a really great mission. So, I mean, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the deliverables, which for us, we have worked on identities and branding with digital outcomes, but this one was very all-encompassing, and it was a really big task. So you can see here we created, everything. We did an Instagram filter. We created the sound design with the sound designer. We worked on the video trailers and all of the visuals that were used at the event. So it was very all-encompassing, basically. And we kind of started with our design process. We started with this question, what if our perception of the world was constructed from the notion of these complex interdependencies instead of binaries? So not looking at the world as we currently do a lot of the time is in binaries or with a dualism, but kind of like if we could take our brains out of what we know and reapply that to understanding the world through a very complicated system, and that's a big part of our lives and a big part of everything that exists. So we worked with their logo type, which was basically the same. We just changed numbers on it. Nothing very exciting. Oh yeah, so these are some early experiments that we worked with. And so I guess talking to that kind of like that dualism or like juxtaposition of organic, and we wanted to create this sense of synthetic as well. And we kind of, with the coloring, we initially really wanted to do something that felt, I guess you could say, like sort of subverting nature. You know, this blue in this kind of hue can't exist in real life. Well, it can in some things, but in the context of this, you'll probably never see it. So we wanted to create some assets that felt natural, but also didn't feel natural. Something that felt like familiar, but not super familiar. So these are some early imaginations that these were just like, I think the first stage of our process, we just started experimenting, and we chose, you know, using 3D software for this particular project. It's something that we're comfortable in, but also it allows us to kind of create things that are like hyper realistic. So you can see on the left here, we have this like kind of anthropomorphic, like sea urchin thing. And then we have these like eggs. Yeah, so we basically want to reference real life without it being too obvious. We created a logo type as well, which we didn't want to stray too far away from what IM had done in the past. They had basically just used Helvetica, I think. And we wanted to bring just like a little bit of finesse to it, but nothing too kind of crazy, just something that complemented the other visual elements that we were using in the project. We were looking at this idea of, and through animation, this idea of zooming in and out, because we kind of imagined that using this idea of zooming in and out, we could kind of show that we are creating perspective. So this was an early experiment as well, where we had this microorganism that we created, and we had, you know, the camera movement was kind of in and out, and that was like a big part of it. And then from there, we kind of applied the other visual assets that needed to be part of it on the right. But I think that's kind of missing a few pieces that was very like early version. But yeah, we wanted to also have like the logo type sort of embedded in the object. That was like a big part of it. We wanted it to kind of like not be very legible. And then you kind of zoom out and you can see all the information you need. So kind of looking at that idea of perspective again. Yeah, and so here, these are just a few notes that we took from our concept proposal that we put in front of them. Through imagery and sound, we can kind of evoke a sense of belonging to the intricate and tactile ecosystems that abstractly represent real life ecosystems, like microbiomes is what specifically we looked at to kind of reference. And so we wanted to explore microscopic shared origins of like synthetic and organic with the planet Earth as a complex living organism. So we're kind of looking at it as a system. But yeah, so that kind of blue look and feel we liked, but we did have a long discussion with IM, and we felt that we wanted to take a slightly different approach, still using like pieces of the same three-dimensional objects and the microbiomes and things like that. But we wanted to step into something that felt a little bit more like we knew those colors in reality. So, and textures, I guess. So we were looking at, you know, real life and colors and kind of feelings that you get from reality. So we ended up going, this is just a screenshot from a deck that we put together, one of the many, where we have this kind of like this juxtaposing palettes. And one big part of it was also having like the actual literal planet as part of the ecosystem. So we wanted to create something that did feel quite different, but still complemented each other. And then this was kind of the look we gave to the Earth, which it is essentially just the planet spinning in space, but we wanted to add this like additional element to it here. I don't know if you can see my face, sorry. And this was just an early stage of the layout. We were kind of playing with like where things sat, but this wasn't what we ended up going with in the final. These are some early tests as well. we were kind of looking at it from this kind of like scientific perspective almost. So we wanted to like here we were referencing like nuclei, you know, if we go really, really, really micro and kind of look at like us organisms, any sort of organism from a very like quantum perspective. And then we're kind of looking at like this helix, which kind of represented that same idea of just really diving deep into that perspective. Then we kind of wanted to play with like textual landscapes. We kind of looked at like, you know, the planet is like a topographic landscape. So we kind of had this like textural space environment. And then we, you know, we added the logo type in there. And these were, again, very early. And then obviously we had like our questions that we're asking, how do we design for these questions? And so we wanted each stage of the process to represent a different feeling. And what does like, you know, humbleness represent visually? What does polarity, I can never say that word. What does empathy and tolerance look like? Better. And then so we kind of, this was part of this, the larger sort of trailer sequence that we created. So this was early stages. And this is kind of like where we got to after all that change, moving away from that blue kind of look and feel. We jumped into this, we added a bit of green, which I have never used. We wanted to keep it kind of like organic feeling, as you can see, but sort of also having these pieces of like technology, or at least referencing interfaces of some kind in it as well. And then, yeah, we started getting experimental with like the sound design, which I hope this is going to work. So we worked with a sound designer to create some pieces for it. So there was a lot of like small sort of short loops and things like that. We wanted to have something that felt really like a lot of like instrumental and like kind of like a tactile feeling. And sort of like drums are really important. This is just, I'll just show you an example of how that we added sound to the visuals and how it kind of like made sense when you see it. You kind of, you know, you zoom out. We really like the sound. It really adds a whole nother layer to like the look and feel, I think.
True.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. And then so I'm just going to show you where we got to in the end very quickly, and then I guess we can jump into this.
Sure.
Sorry, I've been talking a lot. Yeah, so this was kind of we did some print assets. So this was part of the print, which again, we don't really do a lot of. So that's always fun. And I guess I can show you the trailer, which we created.
How can we change the digital economy to address the environmental emergency? Design for Lewis. Responsibility and accountability. Empathy and tolerance. Solidarity.
Oh, we can do that.
That's very cool.
Okay.
Really. So, we had also in the day of the motion design 2 days ago, another studio from Italy, and they worked also for a trailer for another design festival actually.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So it's very nice to understand the difference of they worked also with the 3D animation.
Yeah.
But the result is totally different.
Oh, that's cool.
Of course, because the theme is totally different.
Yeah.
Also the approach, I think, is totally different. So.
Yeah, it's a big part of it. Yeah, and then so I guess we started to finesse, kind of tweak what we'd already created, and these are kind of the final pieces.
Mm-hmm.
We were really happy with it. We felt that it was all-encompassing.
Were they happy? Like they did expect this, or?
Yeah, they were really happy. It was very collaborative, so we kind of checked in with them almost like every day at one point. We had a lot of deliverables, as I said, so it was a lot of a lot of checking in, making sure it all made sense, because they have such a strong vision, at least from the thinking perspective, that we wanted to make sure that it made sense. And they're very conceptual, very, very conceptual, almost like pretty academic. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that it did make sense. Another piece of it was, the previous years, it was very experimental, and they needed something that was a little bit more like palatable for sort of like digital, I guess, like if you think about who goes to maybe a design conference or a tech conference, they were kind of shifting their customers, I guess, their audience a little bit. So they wanted to make sure that it wasn't too weird. So that was one. It's not like it's not weird.
We have a question from Andrea.
By the way, were you going to be weirder than this? Like way more weird than this, or just like?
Weird as in like, I guess, very abstract. They wanted something that was a little bit more literal. You can see that it could be like an organism. Whereas in the past, they had used very, very meta kind of narrative around the visual identity. So, the designer that made last year's, and he did it, I think, 3 years in a row. He's amazing, but he's just like super, super intellectual. And when we got access to his old concept proposals, and it was pretty impressive. So there was big shoes to follow. But yeah, so I think it's still kind of weird, and we're all really happy with it. We can do crazy shit too. But yeah, and we got to make like an Instagram filter, which was really fun.
Nice. Andrea, go.
Hello, my name is Andrea. I was wondering, you mentioned working in digital framework, and so I see a lot of animation and simulation, and I was wondering if your practice is looking at translating your pixel into voxel, and in some way from moving from 2D videos to a 3D object, and if so, what would be the materiality that you would use to do that? Would you imagine something that is a digital material, or are you imagining complex materiality to emerge out from your video themselves?
With this particular project, I think we were looking for something that did feel realistic. Materiality was a big part of it. We wanted it to feel tactile. And I think most of our work, when I say we look at these digital spaces, we kind of like to create work that isn't hyper realistic, and it isn't realistic. It is kind of this medium ground between those two spaces. So that's a really big part of our process. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you. That's.
Yes. He is like, actually also is a like 3D artist, is very into hyper-realistic visions and scenarios. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I love seeing things that are like, is that real? Or is it, because it kind of like makes you question like what reality really is, because you can kind of feel so attached to something that looks so much like you, or like a thing that you've seen in real life. So
okay, there is there is a question from Anna, but the microphone is not working, so we're gonna do it. Wait a second.
Anna, write it down so we can see it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I'd like to know, how do you make some animations? The moldy bread in the video, let's not get this bread. And second, about the video virtual gap here from 0:39 to 0:46 seconds.
I don't know if how do we make the moldy bread? So maybe I'll give you a bit of context. I personally don't physically make the work. I act more as art director, creative director. So my skills are a little bit less hands-on. But I know that the bread was made with a simulation that we created in Cinema 4D.
Okay.
I don't know the segment of
Don't worry, it's fine. It's
if
fine.
you want to message me later and I'll take a look, I can tell you.
Yes, Anna, you can also write to them too on Instagram. Yeah.
On Instagram, okay.
And then?
Okay, the second one was about the video, okay, virtual gap, and if it's possible, how do you create videos, dark wave and lighting test? But I think you just answered the...
Yeah, she has to ask to the...
Yeah, and do you always use just Cinema 4D or other softwares?
It depends. We work mostly Cinema 4D Octane, but we have used Houdini. We have also started using real-time engines, game engines, Unity, Unreal. Yeah, it depends also who we work with, because I think I might have alluded that we work with different people too. So sometimes the workflow can be challenging because they don't use the same program, but we always tend to try to work with people that have things that, that work hopefully in Cinema 4D, but it's not majorly implicated if we don't. It's just a lot of learning on the job sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Andrea again.
Andrea.
I didn't want to steal the conversation, sorry.
No.
You were mentioning empathy, and every time that designers produce objects, they start having some sort of relation with whatever they created. So you mentioned also ecosystem, and I was wondering, did you ever start having an empathic relation with some of your objects in simulation? And if so, do you see them commuting from one ecosystem, from one project to another one, and maybe start having a relation with the office that is more than a simple object in a project, but something that becomes maybe a creature that you are developing throughout different...
I actually never thought about that until you've just said this.
Actually, it's quite like...
No, I understand this point of view. I understand this point of view.
No. I mean, it makes sense. Yes, we use the same. We do use certainly elements, not just from, like a pragmatic perspective, just because, we don't have time, for example. But yeah, no, we definitely use objects across different projects because I think stylistically it makes sense for it to be consistent, of course. But yeah, thinking about it from an empathetic perspective, I guess I don't want to like fetishize, I guess, the things we make. I think that's part of it, is not making sure that it's reality, like real things that we can touch and feel are also very important. But we're not kind of we try not to look into escapism so much. But ultimately, I think escapism does come into play with these worlds we're building, because we are kind of like building something that doesn't exist. So I guess with empathy, we kind of look at how this piece sits into the bigger scope of the world. And that's why we use that. We've just found that creating an emotional connection can be more valuable for us to understand ourselves and the planet. Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you one thing. What?
No, there is Elisabetta.
Ah,
first.
okay. Sorry.
Elisabetta, go.
Yeah, hello, I'm Elisabetta, and I wanted to ask, how could this project have been done in a 2D environment, in your opinion? Because, for example, I don't have 3D skills, so I was thinking during your presentation about some alternatives in 2D or in another way. For example, if I don't have enough tools to work on 3D in a 3D environment, how could I think about it?
I think, I guess one thing that we look at, even if we're not using 3D, is thinking about our work in a spatial format through layers. I think that's a really great tool that you could use in 2D. I think adding texture through, I mean, you can do amazing 3D work in Photoshop even. Can create that sense of 3 dimension. And I think for us, a lot of our work is, it's really important that there's a strong meaning and thematic approach. So I think as long as you have that as your foundation when approaching it, not just allowing for aesthetics to take over, because I think a lot of our clients, and this is just in my experience, they're very excited to hear about the behind the scenes, and then also the end result is very exciting as well. But I think you can think about it spatially, and if you can add layers to it and create a sense of depth, whether that depth is conceptual or it is aesthetic. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have like a question, but it's not really about the work. I would like to know why you moved to London. No, like it's like to London or to Europe.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they're from Australia actually, guys, and they just moved to London. And Chris is not here because he was stuck in Melbourne.
Yes.
So he couldn't be with us.
So Chris is actually American as well. So he has kind of a unique perspective on top of the fact that we were based in Australia. Australia is a unique place, and it's a very soft spot in my heart. It is a very small place. It's a big country, but industry is very small. And so a lot of the work that we have been doing through Australia, we love our clients. We have really great relationships with them. But we tend to, I guess, compromise a lot on the results of the work, the outcomes. We have to be more commercial. We have to, I guess, like commercial gains are slightly more important. Whereas I feel like Europe, in my experience, just from traveling a lot, people like to do weird shit and it's fun. Do you know what I mean? Like, people just get it here, and I don't know how to describe it, but I think it's there's a lot of history. There's a lot of history with art. It goes back centuries. As Australia is a very new country, it does not have that same feel. It's changing, definitely. It is getting better. And London, it's just what made sense. We have a lot of contacts, friends, connections, yeah. So, but I'm definitely going to come to Milan.
We will wait for you.
I know, please.
No, it's nice. I mean, it's interesting to understand because we think about Australia, like a lot of people from Italy, they go to Australia because like it's the new world, let's go there and let's find new opportunities. Yeah. So
yeah, I think it depends what industry you work in. There are some really, interior design is huge. You know, hospitality, tourism, there's some really big industries in Australia, but unfortunately with the type of work that we do, we're very niche, which can be good sometimes because you are kind of the only person that does this.
Exactly.
But then it also means sometimes that like a lot of people don't understand what you're talking about. So yeah, we've just had really great conversations in Europe specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, that was our decision.
Okay, last question. Your background, yours and Chris.
Sure. My background is in graphic design, and I have worked as an art director mostly across branding and identity for a long time. And Chris has an illustration background, and he has worked in motion graphics before we worked together. So we kind of have like two very different perspectives that come together, and like we started learning 3D together. We started designing like websites together with no experience. So you know, when I was studying graphic design, we didn't learn like anything digital. It was all print, it was advertising, it was branding. So yeah, it's been a lot of learning.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Okay. Thank you so much. I was very happy to have you here. I discovered you on Instagram. I told you already. But was very a very nice discover. I think all of the people who participated today, they agree with me. Thank you so much, and good luck with your European adventure. We hope to see you soon.
Nice to meet so many Italians.
Thank you.
Thank you, maybe.
Now you do.
Now
now you do.
And whenever you want to come to Milan,
Absolutely,
just
just text
do it.
us. Yes.
When we can travel.
Yeah,
of course.
we hope very soon. And say hi to Chris from.
I will. He says hi.
Okay. Thank you guys for being with us. And if you're gonna be with us on tomorrow for the product design day, let's see you tomorrow. Okay. Bye and have a good night.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye Christy.
Thank